Guys, welcome back to the channel, and today's video is going to be a very special tutorial where I am going to discuss JavaScript and its relationship to WordPress. So maybe you're a regular WordPress user, you've heard of JavaScript, maybe you have an idea of what it is, but you're not quite sure exactly the role it plays within WordPress. This video is going to explain everything you need to know about JavaScript. Please keep in mind that this tutorial is not meant to teach you how to code in JavaScript. No, you're not going to become a JavaScript programmer by the end of this tutorial. Please keep that in mind. This tutorial is just meant to introduce to you JavaScript in general and also explain to you how WordPress websites make use of JavaScript. I want you to have the right expectations when watching this tutorial. You can think of this tutorial as also a follow-up to the one I made last year where I talked about PHP and how it is used within WordPress websites. I will have the link to that video down in the box below if you're interested in checking it out. But let's start off by talking about JavaScript and what exactly it is. Now, JavaScript is basically one of the most popular programming languages in the world today. It's everywhere. You would find JavaScript in your web browsers, websites, web applications, third-party applications, and so on. Now, whenever you think of code or a function that adds a little bit of dynamism or excitement to a website, it's most likely going to be JavaScript working behind the scenes. If you look at e-commerce websites where they make use of things like coupons, that's most likely going to be JavaScript. Interactive calculators. Whenever you see things like galleries, sliders, or situations where a user clicks on a button and the button expands or shrinks, those kinds of animations are typically run by JavaScript. Let me give you an example in here. This is one of my websites, Lab Cyber, and you can see I've got this gallery in here. And when I hover on an image, you can see that it kind of expands and then you have a bit of text that pops out. That's basically JavaScript. JavaScript is also used in situations that we call event-based. Basically, these are situations where maybe the user resizes the size of the window, or maybe they use their mouse to click on a button. To demonstrate this, let me bring you another website in here. This is W3 Schools. And right here, take a look at what happens when I click on the Try It Yourself button in here. I click in there, and now you have the browser saying 11. That's basically JavaScript working behind the scenes. So whenever you think of code that adds a little bit of some excitement, animation, dynamism, some robust functionality, that's typically going to be JavaScript working behind the scenes. Now let's talk about JavaScript frameworks and libraries, because this is something that you will hear a lot about. JavaScript frameworks and libraries are basically snippets of pre-written code that you can reuse on your site as much as you want. But there is a significant difference between a library and a framework. Let me give you an analogy, right? Let's say, for example, you wanted to prepare pasta, spaghetti, right? What you would need basically would be a pot of boiling water, maybe some oil, some salt, and your actual pasta, right? That would be a library. A library basically gives you access to code that achieves a particular kind of functionality. To give you a web-based analogy, maybe you wanted to create an animation on your site that when the user clicks on an image, maybe it expands or it fades out or it fades in. That is a very, very specific kind of functionality. You would find such kinds of code for such functionality in a library like jQuery. jQuery is one of the most popular examples of JavaScript libraries. But a framework, going back to the analogy of the pasta, instead of you having access to your pasta, the pot, the water, the salt, oil, right? All the things you need to make the pasta, let's now imagine that you have access to an entire kitchen. You have the grill right there, you have other pots and sauces, and you have ketchup, eggs, whatever, right? You've got like a fully stocked kitchen. That's basically what a framework would be. A framework allows you to develop a complete website from the ground up. So that's the significant difference between a framework and a library. A framework gives you access to a very wide variety of functions which you may not even eventually use, but a library will give you access to very specific code that you can use and run to achieve a particular kind of functionality. Now, in terms of frameworks, you would hear frameworks like Angular, JS, and so on. For the libraries, there are two very, very popular ones. You have jQuery and you have JSON. JSON is typically used for developing third-party applications. jQuery would be more for your like animations on your site. But there's also another one called the JavaScript React. These are like very popular JavaScript libraries. So now let's talk about the difference between PHP and JavaScript. In the grand scheme of things, as far as WordPress is concerned, PHP would be the more important of the two languages. That's because WordPress itself is developed in PHP, but JavaScript still plays a very significant role. One major difference between PHP and JavaScript though is the fact that while PHP is server-based, JavaScript is going to be client-based. What this simply means is that when PHP is involved, a request has to be sent from your website to your web server in order for that request to be granted or denied. But in the case of JavaScript, your server is not going to be involved at all. It's basically the browser of the user accessing your site. Let me give an example in here. Okay, I'm on my blog right here. I'm on the home page. If I was to click on how to start a WordPress blog, I click on this link right now, you can see the page refreshed and now we have access to a new page. That's basically PHP working, because when I clicked on the link right here, the request to access this post was sent to my web server. My web server granted the request, and now I have access to the contents of the post. This is PHP. But in cases where JavaScript is concerned, such requests will never get to the server. It's basically going to be the browser that will interpret the code. So another way to look at it is that PHP code is interpreted by web servers, while JavaScript code is interpreted by browsers. And as a result, JavaScript code is typically executed much faster than PHP code, because the request doesn't have to go to my web server somewhere in the world out there. No, the request is going to be handled directly on the web browser when JavaScript is concerned. Now you may think that, okay, if JavaScript code is faster than PHP, then that means JavaScript is always better, right? Well, the answer is no. JavaScript actually has some very significant issues. One is the fact that, remember I said that it is the browser of the user accessing your site that will interpret the JavaScript code. Well, what if JavaScript is not enabled on the user's browser? Your JavaScript code will not work. And there is a reason why a lot of people tend to not want to activate JavaScript on their browsers, because there are very popular attacks, one in particular known as the cross-site scripting attack. This is a very powerful web-based cyber attack on websites that exploit the use of malicious JavaScript code. Basically, the hacker would be able to insert malicious code into the browser of the victim. So when the victim visits that site, the browser executes the malicious code. There is a reason why these attacks are very popular, and as such, many users tend to want to disable JavaScript on their browser. So JavaScript is heavily dependent on whether or not the browser of the user accessing your site has actually activated JavaScript or not. So please keep that in mind. JavaScript may be faster than PHP, but it's not always better. Now, if you're still watching the video at this point, let me just say thank you for sticking around. And if you're enjoying the video, please do consider giving it a thumbs up. And of course, please do leave a comment for the YouTube algorithm. For the past few months, I've been having serious issues with the algorithm. I've not been getting the kind of views I very often get. So please, I do need your help. So please, if you're enjoying the video, if you're finding the content valuable, please do hit that like button and just drop a comment down below to really help with the YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much for your support, and now let's get back to the video. Okay, so now let's talk about how JavaScript is used within WordPress itself. You would find JavaScript in so many themes and plugins, all right? Any kind of plugin that involves things like animation, galleries, sliders, video player, audio player, things like that, typically you will find JavaScript code in such plugins. JavaScript is also used in the backend of WordPress.com websites. This is actually the page right here, the new WordPress.com. The backend is called Calypso. Everything you would find in the backend in here is actually powered by JavaScript. Again, keep in mind that this is specifically for WordPress.com websites. But what about actual WordPress.org websites? Well, Whenever you go to the customize theme options, like what you see right here, whenever you configure things like the site identity, maybe you change the menus, or depending on the kind of theme you're using, you will see other options like, you know, change the theme color, the size of your text, things like that. Everything you basically see in here is run by JavaScript. It's only when I make the changes in here and then I hit publish, that's when PHP comes into play, because now I am sending the request to my web server to publish these changes I have made on my site via JavaScript. That's when PHP comes in. But all the changes in here directly on the site, where I'm changing the menu, switching to homepage settings, adding code to the header footer, things like that, everything in here is powered by JavaScript. We also have the WordPress REST API, the application programming interface. The concept itself is way beyond the scope of this tutorial, but let me just give you an idea of what it is. The WordPress REST API is basically an interface that would allow developers to access the backend of a WordPress website without actually having to log into the backend directly. So the idea here is to be able to allow developers to integrate third-party applications from other sites like, you know, maybe YouTube or Google or Facebook or whatever, allow them to integrate applications from such sites into the WordPress backend, but without actually having to physically log into the backend directly of that site. That's basically the WordPress REST API. This is a very, very simplified version or meaning of what it actually is. But just keep in mind that whenever you hear WordPress REST API, just know that JavaScript is working behind the scenes. Let me now introduce to you two very simple JavaScript code examples, just to give you an idea of what the syntax is and how it works behind the scenes. Now, the very first code you see in here, I want you to take a guess as to what we're actually trying to do. You can take a hint from the document.write animal.color. When you see that, what comes to your mind? If you're thinking, well, we're trying to display or write the color of the animal, you would be correct. That's exactly what this code is meant to do. But let me break it down further for you. See, we have, first of all, the variable animal. Variable represented by var and then animal. What is a variable, right? A variable would be something or an element or an object that we're trying to perform an action on. In this case right now, we're trying to display the color of our variable, which is animal. But then we have something called the method. Methods are the actual actions that we're trying to perform. In this case, what is the method? The method is write. We're trying to print out or display the color of the animal. So now you know what the variable is, you know what a method is. But then take a look, we have these curly brackets in here, and then inside we have type equals dog, color equals black, breed equals Labrador. What exactly are these? Well, type, color, breed are what we call properties. Properties of our object, which is the animal, and these properties have their values. The value of the property type is equal to dog, the value of the property color equals black, and the value of the property breed equals Labrador, and they are all in an array. You can always tell an array by the curly brackets, and then when you have property value, that's basically what we call an array. So now you know what a variable is, you know what objects are, you know what arrays, properties, values, and methods are. Everything in here right now, the whole thing is what you can refer to as a function. Our function right here is we want to display the color of our object, which is that of animal. Let's now take a look at the second example, which is slightly more advanced, but is the same concept, right? We have our variables in here, which are constants, numbers now. So we have constant number 1, num equals 5. So basically, the value of our first variable, which is num1, which is a constant, is 5. And then the value of the second variable, num2, which is also a constant, is 3. We have stated that already. We have assigned values to our variables. Okay, I've added a comment in here to say that, hey, we want to add these two numbers. So now we're saying, okay, our variable sum is equal to num1 plus num2. Basically, what we're saying right now is that we have a new variable which is called sum, and the value of sum is equal to the addition of variable 1 and variable 2. It's as simple as that. And now we want to display the sum on our screen. So console.log is another method. Remember, the first example was document.write. Console.log is basically another way of displaying the value of a variable. So console.log right now is our method. And now in brackets, we're doing something here called concatenation. This is where we try to display some text, but then within that text, we actually have values of a variable that we want to display as well. Take a very, very close look. The first piece of text here is the sum of. You can see I've added quotes right there. This is a direct text. This has nothing to do with the code we've written before. This is just pure simple text directly on the screen. The sum of, and now we have added plus. The plus right now is we're trying to now add the text that we've just displayed plus the value of the variable num1, which is 5, right? And then another plus to add a new text, which is and, another plus to now add the value of the variable num2, and then another plus to add another text is, and then finally we're displaying the value of the variable sum, which is 5 plus 3, which is 8. So if I was to ask you what would now be the output of this code right here, it's basically going to be the sum of 5 and 3 is 8. That's basically what the code is. Obviously, there are far more advanced examples of JavaScript, but these are two very simple examples just to give you an idea of what the syntax is and how JavaScript works behind the scenes. Before I round up the video, I wanted to walk you through the different ways how you can add JavaScript to your WordPress website. There's basically two ways. You can either use a plugin or you can do so manually. Let me walk you through the plugin phase first of all, and there are many plugins, of course, for adding JavaScript to your WordPress website, but the best, in my humble opinion, would be the WP Code Insert Headers and Footers plugin by WP Code. Very, very, very popular. Over 1 million active installations. When you've activated the plugin on your site, you will see the code snippets link right here. You can simply go to the header and footer link, and then right here, you can paste whatever code that you want to your header, body, or footer. As an example, let me go ahead now and paste a very, very, very simple code here in the header. It's just a script to print out an inline script tag added to the header. I'm going to go ahead now to save my changes. And now if I was to view my site, you can now see we have the text right there. An inline script tag added to the header. So this is a very, very, very simple way of adding JavaScript code to your WordPress website. But what if we didn't want to use a plugin and we wanted to do so manually? Well, I could just grab this code again. Let me just cut it off completely, save changes, go back to the site, refresh the page, make sure it's not displaying. All right. If I wanted to add that code manually, I could simply do so via FTP. I'm on my Notepad++ software in here. I'm connected to the site. I could go straight to my header.php file for the 2021 theme which I'm using. And then right here, I could just simply go ahead now and paste the code. You can see the code right here, script, document.write. I'm an inline script tag added to the header. Okay, I'm going to go ahead now and save the file. And if I was to go back to my site and refresh the page, there you go. I have the JavaScript code printing out the text. But the truth is, this isn't the cleanest and most efficient way of actually adding JavaScript code. Typically, you don't want to add these kinds of scripts directly to your header or your footer. In some cases, you could get away with it, but the best way would be for you to actually go to your functions.php file and write the code there properly. So what I'm going to do is this, okay? Let me go ahead and remove the script code from my header, save my changes. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to open up the functions.php file for my 2021 theme. By the way, let me just add that if you're going to do this on a real website, it's always best to do so with a child theme. So you want to make such changes to your child themes functions.php file and not the actual main theme that you're using. So just keep that in mind. All right, I'm on my functions.php file in here. I'm going to go ahead now and paste the much improved code. Right now, you can see I've added the text here that says inline script printed out in the header. I've done the add action. Now, because we're adding this tag to the header, we're going to make use of this WordPress tag here, WP head. I do have the custom name for my function, which I've called test add script and then WP add. And now this is where I'm actually creating the function to print out the text. It says function and then again, the same name, test add script WP head. And now I have the actual script right here. And of course, I've enclosed everything in PHP tags. I'm going to go ahead now and save the file. And then let me go back in here, refresh the page. And now you can see I now have the JavaScript code printing out the text again in the header. Again, you could get away with just adding your script tags directly to your header, but a cleaner way will be for you to actually go to your functions.php file and write out the proper code, create a function to work with your JavaScript code. The last method of working with JavaScript files on your WordPress website is actually the most recommended and the most proper way of working with JavaScript, and that's to make use of this function, which is the WP Enqueue script function. The reason why this is the most recommended method is because WordPress typically has a very structured and defined way of loading scripts on your WordPress website. And the reason why WordPress does this is because imagine you trying to load, let's say, 4 scripts in your header. Maybe you have a script for Google for your SEO purposes. Maybe you have another script that tracks which links your visitors click on your homepage, things like that. Imagine you have 4 or 5 scripts loading up in your header. There is always the potential that there could be a conflict where you have one script clashing with another. But when you enqueue your scripts, when you use this function to enqueue your scripts, you're basically saying, hey, WordPress, this is a JavaScript file that I want to work with. You're giving it to WordPress. WordPress will take it and then will decide when best to load that particular script so that it doesn't conflict with another script. This is, again, the most efficient, the purest, cleanest way of loading up your script files on your WordPress website. Let me bring back Notepad++ in here and show you this in action. See, I'm working with the 2021 theme right here, and look over here on the right inside of this folder that says assets. If I opened it right now, you will see I have another folder here called JS. These are the JavaScript files that comes with the 2021 theme by default. I open this up, and right now you will see all the files in here, customize.js, customizepreview.js, and so on. Look at this one right here, primary navigation.js. This is the JavaScript file that controls the main menu navigation on our website. And when I open it right here, you can see all the JavaScript code. Very quite complex. You know, I could call it quite a complex code, but there it is right here. So you have got all these files in here. How does WordPress now actually enqueue these files? If I go back to my functions.php file, again for the 2021 theme, right now, this is where you'll begin to see the scripts being loaded right here. Do you see? Main navigation script. It says, okay, if has nav menu. What this is basically saying is that if the WordPress user has created a primary menu for the website, now enqueue the script. You can see right now we are enqueuing the script right here, primary-navigation.js. That's the file right here. This is the code in our function.php file that actually loads up the JavaScript file right here. And you see other ones in here as well. You have the enqueue script for the responsive-embed.js. This is the file right here, responsive-embed.js, and so on and so forth. So whatever theme you're using, I would encourage you to take a look at the theme files, try to locate the JavaScript folder containing all the JavaScript files for that particular theme, and then go to the functions.php file and try to see where those files are actually being loaded. But once again, When it comes to you loading script files on your WordPress website, this is by far the most efficient method of doing so. I might make a separate video that will cover fully how JavaScript files are actually loaded on WordPress websites. So that's it for today's video, where I have talked about WordPress and JavaScript. And if you enjoyed the video, please do consider giving it a thumbs up. Share this video with anyone who may feel might benefit from it. And if this is the first time you're new here to the channel, please do subscribe, hit the bell so that you're notified whenever I upload a new tutorial. And of course, if you have any questions or comments, put them down in the comment section below. I'll do my best to answer them as soon as I can. My name is Alex. It's been a pleasure. Stay safe out there, and I'll talk to you next time. Cheers.